Self-denial. It's not over when we're sober. Yeah, I got a reputation, cry like a Britney meme. They call me a cloud chaser. You're chasing surgeries. I get a little nervous, now I'm self-sabotaging. You be thinking I'm perfect, are you on narcotics? Are you drunk or high? Do you really want me, myself, and I? Think things over when you're sober. You ain't no stat to me, no triple double by balcony. It's not over when we're sober.
But time after first date, and you got right back to me. I liked it straight, no chase. You like the umbrella on your daiquiri. I'ma do soul searching, less of like Team Rocket. You be saying I'm worth it. Are you on narcotics?
Are you drunk or high? Do you really want me, myself, and I? Think things over when you're sober. You ain't no stat to me, no triple double.
The Big Play Reflog Show is brought to you by ShackNews.com. Shack News has you covered for all your gaming needs with news, guides, walkthroughs, and reviews, like this week's featured article reviewing the brand new Mario Strikers Battle League soccer game for Nintendo Switch. And stay informed with this week's Shack Chat, where they discuss the biggest announcements that came out last week's Summer Game Fest. Remember, you can join in on all the conversations by using the Shack News Cortex. So if you're a gamer, Shack News is the site for you. Check them out on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at the handle @Shack News and at ShackNews.com.
It's time! Streaming live from Cleveland, Ohio! Presenting the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight podcast of the world, the Big Play Reflog Show!
Okay, do you need medical attention?
Yeah.
What is wrong?
I don't know. I know damn now. Attacked by Chuck. To the 10. He's still running to the 5. He gives up to the 50.
It's time! The Big Play
Welcome to the Big Play Reflog Show. I am your host, Big Play Dave, alongside my main man, Mr. Chris McNeil, and Gabriella Cruz. How you guys doing?
Great. Welcome back, Gab. Seems like you haven't been on in a while. It's good to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully you don't have any live footage of my recent golf swing, Dave.
You didn't hurt yourself, did you, Gab?
I'm not really quite sure when we break it down how I didn't tear any ACLs.
Gab, who is the person who, I don't know who it was on the internet, but
with all the arrows?
Red arrows just everywhere.
I don't know, but that was freaking hilarious.
And you know what? I didn't quite get the lamp post, the reply, but then I looked at Chris's still frame and I was like,
yeah,
that looks exactly like the lamp from the Christmas.
It's literally like the leg.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, Gab, I think we'll take a break from golfing for a while.
Well, no, this is the time for me to learn. You owe me a trip to Top Golf.
All right.
Or the simulator.
There we go. We'll get Jimmy Hanlon in the simulator. We will fix that swing.
Yeah.
And Justin Lauer, too.
And Justin Lauer, yes. We'll get we got a foursome. We're ready to go.
There we go.
Chris, you can announce it.
Beautiful. I appreciate that. I've been relegated to that role now.
Shoot.
My golf game hasn't fallen that much, Dave.
I don't know. Last outing, you've got a lot to redeem, Chris. You've got a lot.
I know, but we were just talking about it today. We've got Ricky's outing coming up.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's August. So I've got a little bit of time here to kind of figure things out through the summer, come out strong at the end of the summer with my golf game.
There we go. Me, you, Gab, and we got to find one more, and we're good to go.
All right, let's do it.
All right, we've got a what's that, Gab?
I said, you really want me on your team?
You could drive the cart.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, we got a packed show for you guys tonight on the show. Cleveland Headlines brought to you by TSE Cleveland. Then on to our featured interview with Ohio lawyer Pete Pattakos talking Deshaun Watson. After that, we'll get into Guardians trivia with Who Wants to Be a Billionaire, and then we will call it a show. Let's get it going with some Cleveland Headlines. Cleveland Headlines brought to you by our good friends at TSE Cleveland. They've helped us give away a ton of signed Browns merchandise, so make sure you're following them at TSE Cleveland on Twitter, and keep an eye out for the show tweets for those weekly giveaways. And tonight, TSE is helping us give away a Wyatt Teller signed jersey, and the winner is Eric Johnson at ejohnson8644. Another bot. Congratulations. You are taking home the signed Wyatt Teller jersey. Good stuff. All right.
Hey, do we have breaking news?
I don't know.
Music. So I've got some breaking news here.
I used to on my phone, but I don't have it right now.
Very pertinent to our interview tonight for Peter Pattakos from
All right,
Pro
I can only think
Football
of
Talk from
All
Pro
right.
Football Talk and Mike Florio.
Okay.
Report that just came down 8:30 this evening. 2 more lawsuits to be filed against Deshaun Watson, bringing us up to a total of 26, folks. 26.
Yeah, I don't think they're stopping probably anytime soon.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there you go. So a very pertinent interview this evening as we explore all of this with Peter Pattakos here in Cleveland.
Yeah, there we go. All right, let's start with some Cleveland Guardians. We'll get into Deshaun Watson because they've been very, very fun to watch. If you haven't been watching, tune in, head to the ballpark, hang out with Gab. They took 5 of 7 on the homestand. Some incredible games. So I forget which one it was, but they've been going down to the wire. They've been scoring actual runs. It's not 1-0. It's not 2-0. We're seeing some actual runs. They've been on a tear. Gab, what's it been like? What's the atmosphere been down at the ballpark?
You know, it's been pretty good. I was really excited that this past homestand, and we're still getting a little bit of odd weather, like the rain came in randomly
Right.
the night that we walked it off. But it's good to see all the people really starting to get behind the team and enjoy themselves at the ballpark, because that's how it should be. This is a really fun, young, exciting team. They're starting to find a groove here. I think the addition of Oscar Gonzalez has really just put everybody in a good – we've got a good flow going right now.
Yeah, well, I think the youngest team in baseball,
Yeah.
if not close to it. So we've got 3 games versus the Rockies, who stink, starting tomorrow. But after that, we've got 17 straight games against good teams with winning records. So we've got Minnesota twice, the Dodgers before that, and then Boston, and then the Yankees. Chris, how crucial is this? We're in a crappy division. What are your thoughts on the next 17 games here?
I don't know if I'd use the term crucial with this type of a team, because we're not even into the window of winning right now. I wouldn't say with this team. I mean, this is a young team, right? We're
Absolutely.
younger than a lot of AAA clubs, so it's all about development. So I'll be interested to see how we play against the big boys. Minnesota has not been Minnesota's been kind of up and down, more or less. And so they're looking to get right back at it. And we're going to have 2 series with them. Of course, the Yankees have been as hot as anything. We get to play them right here in Cleveland. So it's going to be exciting to see when we're playing this good competition, and whether, this team can hold up, because it's going to be all about growth. And this is going to be another step in what I think is the development of a team that's really starting to come together.
Yeah, they're giving me Cavs vibes. No expectations, super fun team. We're going to start tweeting. They're super duper fun. People are going to get annoyed on Twitter. But there's a lot of parallels to these two ball clubs.
Definitely. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that they have a good gel. I know it's so cliche to say, but it seems like everybody's having a good time. And then also, I love the fact that Oscar Gonzalez gets the whole crowd going because he walks up to SpongeBob SquarePants. So it's like, are you ready, kids? And like the whole ballpark. It's actually genius, like to think that, because I feel like it gets everybody involved, not even just the home team. So it's cool. There's a vibe at the ballpark for sure. You got to catch this team in action.
That's awesome.
We're only 3 games back. I mean, 3 games back.
Yeah.
Right.
We're hovering Minnesota,
all
aren't
this
we?
game against Minnesota. You have a chance to really do something. So it's going to be fun. You know, even if we go out and lay an egg in these games, we still got a good young team. But I really have some confidence in this team. You never know. One of the things that you give a young team hope, and you never know what's going to happen. And right now they've got a lot of hope with what they've put together, a lot of positivity going on there. So it's good to see. It's good to see.
And Gab, you mentioned the vibe down at the ballpark. We had some Browns players. The offensive line crew was hanging out in a suite down there, little team bonding activity. Our friend Carly Teller tweeted out or put it on TikTok or something, a video of the Cleveland Browns offensive linemen and their walk-up songs. Speaking of walk-up songs, I believe Wyatt Teller was going Garth Brooks, not Chris Gaines. Blake Hance, believe he said girls just want to have fun.
Nice.
Keeping with the vibe. Gab, if you were a batter, what would your walk-up be?
It would probably be. What were my songs?
I put you on the spot. Well,
You want to know what's funny though? Don't ask me why. Do not ask me why. But for the longest time, I just really loved the song "Pimpin' All Over the World." And I always said, I'm like, that would be my walk-up song.
There you go.
I don't know. I just like the sound of it. It's like, oh, yeah, the fancy cars, the women in the caviar. Like, it doesn't, I don't know why. It's just like a fun, upbeat, but the lyrics, it doesn't make any sense for me to have that walk-up song. But Pimpin' All Over the World, if it wasn't one of my originals, obviously.
There we go. We got Pete in the green room just taking notes on these walk-up songs. We will be joined by Pete Pattakos here momentarily. Chris, walk-up song. You're walking up to the plate. What are you going with?
9 Inch Nails Closer. I've always said that. Yeah. Trent Reznor, local boy.
I like that.
Not many people attribute that to him, you know, being a local boy, but he is. And 9 Inch Nails Closer, though. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe that's not one with the kids at the ballpark, but that's all right.
That's all right. Yeah. SpongeBob to 9 Inch Nails. What could go wrong?
What's yours, Dave?
I would go AC/DC Shoot to Thrill. That's my favorite song of all time. Or I would just go full nerd and just go with the Avengers theme song.
Oh boy, you
One
are
of the two.
complete nerd.
Yeah.
Have you seen the new Jurassic Park yet?
I have not. I have not seen Top Gun. I haven't seen Jurassic Park. I haven't been to the theater.
I haven't been to either of those either. I hear Top Gun, yes. Jurassic Park, no. That's what everybody.
Yeah, that seems pretty fair.
Yeah.
All right. We got mandatory minicamps coming up. Chris, is there a special group within this team that you're excited to see? We've got a lot of new players.
Yeah, you know, you're going to want to see the offense, whether they're all on the same page, I'd say. Obviously, with Baker not there and us moving on. Kind of see some of the new look defense as well. But once again, Dave, and we're going to talk about this a lot. I just want to get through this off season. I want to get to the season. Stay healthy out there. Don't have anything Browns-ish happen to us in this off season, and just let's get to the regular season.
Don't have anything Browns happen in the off season. It's been an off season already.
I know. Any more than it already has. We don't need to just keep adding to our problems by having injuries or anything freak happen during these OTAs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shall see. And we'll see if Deshaun Watson's out there. We have no idea, but we're going to bring in Pete Pattakos of, I'm going to say of ClevelandFrowns.com, because that website goes way back. Used to read it a long, long time ago. We are bringing in Pete here momentarily. Stay tuned. All right, today on the what is that? Where are we? Pete broke everything. Well, there we are. We found him. There he is.
Oh, there you go.
Today
right.
on that line, attorney and founder of ClevelandFrowns.com, Mr. Pete Pattakos, or as the national pundits used to say when we were talking about the Indians, Pete Pattakos. Welcome to the Big Play Reflog Show, my friend. How are you?
Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a while. So you've been pretty vocal in your defense of Deshaun Watson out on the internet. So for those who haven't seen your tweets, haven't looked at the article yet, breaking it all down, kind of summarize your stance on Deshaun with some of this background.
Sure. And before I do that, let me say, I'm not. I blogged for a long time about Cleveland sports. I used to maintain a very active blog talking about the Browns. And as you know, Dave, over the last 10 years or so, the internet has changed, and so has my life. And I don't really blog about the Browns like I used to. I have a very busy law practice, and in my law practice, I have a very diverse law practice in that I am one of the few lawyers around, for better or worse, who has represented and will represent sex abuse victims in high-profile cases, and I will also represent those falsely accused. I have won jury trials on behalf of defendants who were falsely accused of not just sexual assault, but rape. And I got to say, Dave, I know what a smear campaign looks like. And as a Browns fan, and frankly, just as a citizen, I've been following this Deshaun Watson story. At first I'm following it from 30,000 feet like any ordinary citizen would.
Sure.
And as these allegations keep piling up and the story keeps coming out, I'm starting to think this just doesn't add up, because I'm thinking back to what was happening before these allegations started to surface. And, then I started to have my doubts about this story even before Deshaun was signed with the Browns. And then, of course, he signs with the Browns, and then now the story's in my backyard. And frankly, as an attorney and somebody who believes in justice, who believes in the importance of truth, I felt compelled to speak out because the narrative on this has gotten so far out of control. So that's my preface. God knows I don't need the work. I'm busy enough, and I'm not chasing page views. I know at some point, if you believe in justice and you care about the truth, and you're competent enough to recognize that everything seems off about this, I feel like a duty is sort of falling on me to speak out about this. And I'm frankly blessed to be in a position where I can say these things without having the professional fallout that, say, maybe a New York Times reporter or ESPN talking heads would not be able to do, if that makes sense. So,
sure.
Pete,
yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by everything feels off about this? Go ahead and give us the context for what you mean by that.
So first of all, and this is what people don't remember, is what was going on, not just in Houston, Texas, not just within the Texans organization, but in the headlines of national NFL press right before these allegations started to surface. And that is Deshaun Watson creating a complete public relations disaster for the Houston Texans by his publicly questioning the management there and he was literally forcing his way out of town. And everybody knew it. Everybody knew Deshaun wasn't happy in Houston. And it was unprecedented to have a young, and particularly a young black quarterback, but really take the race out of it. To have a young quarterback who was going into his 5th year, had just signed an extremely lucrative contract. I don't remember if it was the biggest contract that a 5th-year quarterback had signed, but it was in the conversation. And there were a couple of issues. Number one, there was the former Texans owner, who has since passed away, that is Bob McNair, had made that infamous statement about Kaepernick kneeling and saying to the press, well, we don't want the inmates running the asylum.
Right.
And that upset players. There was a lot of solidarity about that among the players. And not only did McNair say that, he doubled down on it right before he died. And that was creating a problem for Deshaun Watson. Saying, you know, I'm a young black quarterback with unprecedented star power, and people are pressuring him to speak out. Well, then another thing happened that has really flown under the radar, is that after Bob McNair passed away, and his son Cal wasn't really known as a saint in this regard either, and I think people assume the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He had his own dust-ups, and that's linked in some of my posts about this, but I think the most salient thing here is that the Texans had a vacant GM spot open, and they hired a high-profile consulting firm to identify candidates for that GM position. And that consulting firm identified as the top 2 candidates 2 black men. And, you know, for better or worse, the Texans hired a white man who wasn't one of the top 2. And I don't know how it got out. I don't know how it leaked, but this has been reported in the Washington Post. And Deshaun Watson was at this point even more upset and even more under pressure to speak out. So right before these accusations hit, there was a report in the Washington Post. And the title of this post was, Deshaun Watson is taking a stand against disingenuous NFL owners. And this was dated, I'm pull it up right here. This is dated February 1st, 2021. It's an opinion column. And the statements in here are remarkable. And frankly, they're explosive for national press to be saying these things. This report credits Deshaun Watson for having sparked, and this is a quote, a player awakening that owners should acknowledge and respect, rather than trivialize the men who enliven the sport. This report also described the Texans organization as dysfunctional, particularly unstable, and characteristic of the NFL's preset dehumanization. While Watson, in contrast, is described in this report as, quote, thinking deeply about systemic inequality and wanting to be as far away from the Texans as he can get. This is a star quarterback who was beloved in the city. And this was an unprecedented PR nightmare and disaster for the Texans owners.
But what did he do?
So-
I don't remember what he actually did there. You have a lot of descriptions and opinion pieces, about what they think he's doing. But what did he do?
Oh, that's a
Did he
good
come out
question.
with any statements?
That's a good question, and I don't really know how much it matters, because the fact is, if this is getting published in the Washington Post, it's what people think he's saying. I think that this report, and again, you can look it up, it's February 1st, 2021. Again, it's in the Washington Post. The title is Deshaun Watson is taking a stand against disingenuous NFL
But
owners.
what did he do? How did he take a stand? I don't remember him taking a stand, to be fair.
Well, that's the thing. Not a lot of people do remember it, because this is the kind of thing that doesn't tend to get reported, or tends to not get reported.
I think if someone takes a stand, it definitely gets reported. Can you marry it for us how what you just said equals a smear campaign? Are you suggesting that the Houston Texans owners started to plant 66 female masseuses and across 4 different states and ask them to lie about something to smear his name?
Sure. Well, first I'll say that
Just give us context to how you just elaborated on him being upset with the maybe dysfunctional part of the team and how that even relates to the smear campaign conspiracy theory that you're bringing up.
So first of all, I think it's important to note that there are not 66 women accusing Deshaun Watson of committing misconduct.
Yes, well, that's what's been reported.
No, that's not what's been reported. What's been reported is that he visited 66 masseuses over a certain period of time, but only 24 of them are accusing him of misconduct.
Well, 26 are doing
26
lawsuits.
now, as of
26
half an hour.
26 are going ahead and doing lawsuits.
Okay.
That's new,
But that
yeah.
doesn't mean that
That's new. Yeah.
that doesn't mean that misconduct was, you know what I'm saying? How about this? Let's look at the facts. Would you say that do you work in professional sports? No, you're a lawyer. Are you a woman? No. Have you ever gotten DMs? No. From sports players? No. So let me just ask you, do you think that it's normal for a professional athlete who has all of that set up through his team to reach out through Instagram, a very casual, not professional platform, and target all female masseuses? Do you think that that's a normal behavior? Let me just ask you that.
I do.
You think that that's
I
a normal
do.
behavior?
And
66 over the course of 17 months. You would say that that's normal, and you can pinpoint multiple athletes within the NFL world, Major League Baseball, NBA. You think that's the norm? I'm just asking, do you think that's the norm?
Here's what I can tell you. Here's what I know is the norm.
So you don't think that's the norm, is what you're implying.
Here's what I think is the norm. And you asked me what I do for my job. I work as an attorney on both sides of these cases. And what I can tell you is that young athletes, especially young athletes who are in a position to earn a lot of money or who are earning a lot of money, are being groomed. And this is another part of the story that is not being reported and is not being examined. I can tell you from my firsthand experience.
Are being groomed for what?
Please let me talk.
Are being groomed for what though?
I don't want to be talked over. I didn't come on this show to be talked over.
Well, just clarify for us because our listeners want to know.
You asked me a question. Let me answer the question, okay? This is a fraught subject. I don't want to be hit here with propaganda.
I'm not being propaganda. I'm clarifying for those who don't understand what you just said by that I work with athletes and they're all being groomed. Groomed for what? Just all I'm saying is clarify.
Many athletes are being groomed to use masseuses and to have masseuses satisfy their sexual needs.
I would love to have some evidence on that. If you don't have evidence to support that, what you just said was an opinion. Proceed.
I think that I do have evidence on this, and I think this.
You have your opinion based on your own experiences. That is not evidence. You have your own opinion based on experiences with your law practice, but that is definitely not.
I don't think you know what evidence is, and I think that this Deshaun Watson.
Neither do you.
My experience and track record conclusively demonstrates to the contrary, as does the grade that I got in evidence class at Northwestern Law School. But thank you.
Grades mean a lot. They mean everything.
Well, I wouldn't say that either. But I'm asking for a little patience with an answer to a question that you're asking me that is complex. I think that anyone who is in sports, any athlete, anyone who is involved with big-time professional sports knows that these athletes, particularly at a certain age, particularly up-and-coming athletes, commonly pay masseuses for sex. I think and what we're seeing with Watson is that is the most reasonable inference that can be drawn from the evidence in this case, that what Deshaun got caught up in is paying for sex and not getting his sexual needs met in an organic way. And there are, and I have very good reason to believe and firsthand knowledge that this happens when these young men are in college. When these men are at these big time programs, they are being trained by their agents, by their handlers, by their coaches to do it this way. And I don't know why. I don't necessarily know why. I feel like part of it is a control issue. And certainly you can draw the inference that this has helped the McNairs control the Deshaun Watson story. But I think you look at every single thing you see about this Deshaun Watson story, everything about the allegations, the inferences that you can draw, the most reasonable ones are that Deshaun Watson was paying masseuses for sex, and that there was a very well-organized network of masseuses who were offering these services. Now, obviously, it's a fraught situation, and obviously, they're operating within the gray area of the law, which is what allows a narrative like this to turn the way it has. So, look, it's very difficult to come up with concrete proof of this. But I think that if you speak with enough people and if you do enough research, and frankly, if there were journalists out there who were interested in getting to the truth, this is the angle they would be exploring.
So they would be exploring the generalization that coaches in college groom their athletes to go solicit sex from masseuses, is what you just said.
I would say that, look, what I would say is I wouldn't say it that way. I would say that they would be pursuing the angle of just how common it is for pro athletes and people who operate in these elite circles to access sex for money.
So is it college or pro? Because there's
It's both.
now.
I would say it's both. And it's in college, I would say it's at the higher levels.
But you said that you believe that they're being groomed to seek that out by their coaches.
Coaches, handlers, I think the coaches are probably.
What do the coaches get from that by saying, "Hey, Jimmy, why don't you skip the free massage from all of our Cleveland Clinic staff, and just go get your massage from an Instagram person?"
So first of all, I don't think this is a good thing. I'm not arguing in defense of this. I'm saying that it happens. And I think that the people that groom the players this way, what they get out of it is they get control. Agents get control, coaches get control, owners get control, etc. And I think the narrative goes something like this. It's something like, hey, look, man, you don't need these kind of distractions now. You don't need the distraction of a woman. You don't need the distraction of falling in love. Just go this way. Here's some masseuses. They'll take care of you. You stay focused on the field.
Dude, I'm sorry, but this theory is just so far out for me, especially from someone who has competed at the D1 level and was friends with a lot of athletes. Like, I never heard through the grapevine anything like this. I did hear, people taking signing stuff they shouldn't have been, taking gifts they shouldn't have been, taking plane rides they shouldn't have been. Ain't nobody that I knew personally did I hear anything about this.
And
so
where'd you go to school?
Syracuse.
Why would they talk about it with you?
Because we're friends. We're in the same friend group. We hear tons of stuff. You would think that between the athletes it would trickle down. We'd hear about it, because we heard about everything else. I'm just curious and fascinated, actually, that you put on the table. It's actually so out of left field. Like, I can't even think that you genuinely think that starting at the college level, coaches think they're going to be more efficient and have more control of their athletes by guiding them into the direction of seeking massages from not their team. I just don't see how any of that, no offense, Pete, makes logical sense.
Yeah, again,
I'm
not saying that it's necessarily coaches in all cases. I think this is the sort of thing that, just like with the money, but so you acknowledge that this happens with money. You acknowledge that this happens with payments. It's
from
not
an
really
individual player
really,
standpoint, yeah, because they want what they want. But
it's not that far of a leap.
Grooming, I think grooming is extra. I don't know. I think grooming from coaches and handlers is a little bit of a leap.
I'm encouraging you to open your mind, and
I'm encouraging you to open your proof, like your search for evidence there, because I have no idea what you're going off of, especially for someone who's never been in that atmosphere or competed at that level. Like,
why do you think the Texans gave him an NDA?
You tell me. I don't know. You think that you're talking about the NDA for all of the masseuses, or?
Yes. The Texans security guard that dropped the NDA. This was in the New
You
York
don't
Times
think-
report.
Right, but you don't think, okay, so a security guard gave him an NDA. You don't think that the security guard felt pressured from him?
From
How high-
Deshaun Watson.
How high on the totem pole is a security guard?
How high in the totem pole? I forget what they said this guy was. He used to have a high-level government job. I mean, the guy's a high-level front. He's the director of a security for an NFL team. That's a pretty big job.
So what's your
Bigger job than you've ever had. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be personal, sure. That's non-topical, as you would say in the courtroom. But
So-
go ahead and tell us what the point of what you just said was. Why would that matter? And what jump are you trying to make?
You're asking about evidence and what evidence there is that NFL players are regularly, or that it's a common occurrence for elite athletes to pay to have their sexual needs satisfied. The fact that director of for NFL has an NDA ready to hand to a player is some evidence that this is the case. It's not compelling. It's not the most compelling evidence.
It's not. There's still a jump. There's a lot that has to be. You're sewing it together on your own there.
It's called an inference. And what inferences are.
Why is it so
reasonable
hard for
conclusions?
you to infer that people in a position of power and being entitled and being an athlete have the advantage to take advantage of other people, including sending manipulative direct messages that allude to the fact that they're just looking to support Black businesses?
Mhm.
That behavior is manipulative in nature. That is not an outright, hey, I'm going to pay you for sex. Is that okay? That's not the same thing as what you're even suggesting. This is someone who has a distinct pattern of behavior. Maybe it's not all criminal, but the point of the matter is in violence education, which is what I'm a part of, we call these patterns. It's a repeated pattern of behavior. I mean, you can't refute that. Maybe they're not all criminal, but we know that we have textual evidence. When we know that we have textual evidence of him reaching out to all females over that span of time, we know that there's, at minimum, this is someone who's trying to look to push the boundaries on some people who are not expecting it. It's not the same as saying, hey, I'm upfront about this. I'd like to sneak around and pay for sex because I don't get those needs met, because I can't get those needs met because I'm a professional athlete and I have money and fame and it's all at my fingertips anyway.
So if you think that something like this happens, first of all, the inference is that Deshaun expects to pay for sex from these women. I think that's what the inference is. I don't think that that can really be reasonably debated. I think that the inference is that Deshaun expected that these women would consent to this sexual activity. But
expecting someone to consent is not the same. Expecting someone to consent is not the same as consent.
No, that's right. But here's the point you're missing, is that pushing boundaries in conversations in asking someone for sex or soliciting sex.
That's not what these reports said. Not when you grab someone's hands, and not when you tell someone and you get aggressive with it. That's not the same as, first of all, not all of these are conversations. It was well documented in multiple documents that
I believe 3 of the accusers are saying he even touched them at all.
Well, that's
right.
What do you think about that? Do you think that that's normal? Do you think that that's normal?
Do I think that if a person...
Because what you just said before was it's not uncommon for people to push boundaries in conversation. Okay, well,
no,
that's not...
it's not. And I think it's probably especially uncommon for a superstar NFL quarterback who has 9 figures in his bank account to expect that he's going into a situation where a young lady is going to be willing to have sex with him and push those boundaries. I do think that is something that, especially if he's been groomed by his handlers, his trainers, his managers, whoever else, to expect this, then I do think that that's normal. Now, is it right? Is it right if Deshaun Watson is assaulting women? Even if you could conclude, assume everything that the 3 women that are alleging touching, assuming that the 3 women that are alleging that he actually touched them, assume everything they're saying is true.
Well, wait.
Deshaun is
I mean, there was
over-aggressive.
physical contact in more than 3. You're saying that he initiated in 3. You're saying that, oh, well, only 3, they could tell that, oh, well, he was the one being forceful about it.
Only 3 of the accusers are
But
saying
also, we're
that.
not including the people, that's not including the people that were blindsided by the fact that he started asking for these favors and had to feed their kids at home
These
and maybe
people
went
that are
through with it
saying
because
they were blindsided. First of all, you're approaching this. One inference
some
I can draw.
some of them were. One woman left and he didn't pay her the other half of what he owed her. This was a woman she was a mom of 2 kids. He sent her
Mhm.
back and said, "Nope, you don't get the rest of your paycheck because you're
Yeah.
leaving out on me."
Yeah.
That's. So what do you mean?
What do I mean by what? I can. Here's one inference that I think everybody listening to this program can make is that you've come into this conversation with you already have your opinions.
I
You
don't.
already have a
I'm well
position.
read, and I'm looking for. I'm grasping for something of validity from what you have said, but I think it's so far out that you think that he's been groomed, and that college athletes have been groomed by their coaches and handlers to seek out sex. They need to seek out sex that needs to be paid for by, like, I don't know how we get there. That's all I'm saying. If it was compelling, I would be like, all right, yeah, okay, but I don't see even like how. I mean, even from working in professional sports and hearing so many stories, especially among female reporters, it's like we know, we've seen, we've heard, we share stories, we know. It's really not, it's more obvious to just think that this is someone who has a platform and it has been said yes to his entire life. There is an entitlement factor and he takes advantage. Maybe it's someone who simply can't separate porn from reality. Like he gets out there and he's like, well, you know what? Maybe I could scoot away with this. After all, like I'm allowed to because I am who I am. I think that just like makes more sense than to infer that like there's this whole scheme going on that the Texans, since he criticized the front office or whatever, they must have schemed this whole thing. Women from 4 different states and 17 months worth of all these different things. Like, how do you come up with that rather than just like, maybe this is just a dude with a distinct pattern of behavior? Is it all criminal? Probably not. Do we have a moral compass issue? Maybe.
Well, let me ask you this:
putting women in compromised positions over and over again.
You're raising two issues. Look, there was I think it's extremely reasonable to say, of course, there was a pattern of behavior here. I think that it would be very hard to deny. Yes, there's a pattern of behavior here. The question is, what is that pattern of behavior? And as you know, and I know you disagree, the most reasonable inference, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people agree with me here, is that pattern of behavior was that Deshaun Watson expected to be able to pay these masseuses for sex for whatever reason. Call it entitlement or call it experience. That Deshaun Watson was used to engaging in consensual transactions. So from there, I have 2 questions I want to ask you.
You use the word consensual, but I don't know that that's contextual because you can't assume that all of them were consensual. But go ahead.
You can't assume that they're not either. So we have to make inferences.
Yeah. So if you err on the side of not, then you can't. So I mean,
why?
I mean, not for. I'm not saying we should err on the side of not for all of them, but I'm saying if there's a pile of all of them and a good portion are not. I mean, doesn't that make? Are we not looking at this is wrong?
We're having a conversation about whether it is wrong or not. And what I'm suggesting is, and look, what I'm suggesting is, look, we need to look at all the facts to decide whether it was wrong or not, because there is a way to look at these facts that makes this not nearly as wrong as it's being presented as. And this is what I want to ask you is, assuming that the allegations of the 3 or 4 women that are saying that he actually touched them, there's no allegations of violence. There's no allegations that he raped any of them. At most, he creeped them out. He touched their hand and tried to move it somewhere. There's one allegation about him ejaculating. I don't think that's very credible, but even if you believe that, do you think this guy, and just assume for a moment, because I think you have to agree that it's at least possible that this is the case. It's at least distinctly possible that Deshaun Watson was used to having sexual favors that he paid for from so-called masseuses, and that there's a network of masseuses that provide these services. In fact, we know that there are networks of masseuses that provide these services because Bob Kraft, the Patriots owner, went to just such a network. So let's not pretend.
But masseuses is not the same as what you're alluding to with Bob Kraft.
Bob Kraft went to masseuses. It was a massage parlor that Bob Kraft went to. So this is a masseuse parlor.
No, I'm pretty sure didn't what he sought out was explain what he sought out, because I'm gonna have to go back.
It was a massage parlor. Yeah.
There's about zero difference between where
well,
Bob Kraft was.
It was an established retail location as opposed to, I would say, Instagram and going to DMs, which is what Deshaun Watson's MO was. So I think there is a distinction there.
Yeah, because I think the difference is if there's an established institution for that, okay, and then if there's, let me reach out to X number of people on Instagram and say that I'm looking to support small. I just can't see how you're not going to acknowledge the manipulative part about it is all. You're saying that it's just a little more straightforward, that he was used to seeking out and paying for. Well, then why was it? And you claimed even that there's networks of people set up to do this. How could you possibly generalize that for each individual woman from all different locations? Keep in mind, these aren't big names. These are small, it's not a big name institution, well-known. These are small people looking to get their business going, looking to have a big time client. Maybe some of them, and maybe not all of them. Because like what you said, sure, maybe this all isn't criminal activity, but that's not the point. The point is, if there's a repeated pattern of behavior and he's going to continue putting women in compromising situations, like, how do we feel about that as supporters? How do we feel about that as people who want him to be a leader? How do we feel about that, about people who expect him to use his platform to use his behavior to be a role model for young boys, young up and coming boys? How do we change that cycle of athletes thinking they're here and women are here? Do we want that cycle to continue? Do we want that person to be the face of our organization? That's the question. I'm not gonna go back and forth with you about what's already been happened in the court. Like we've already seen. Okay, maybe not all of this behavior is in the court of law. Well, first of all, we're talking about very difficult crimes to prove. Regardless, only a small percent of these he said, she said types of cases even go to trial. Overwhelmingly the majority, and I'm sure you already know this, it's so impossible to prove with evidence, because who walks in thinking, I should set up a camera for this, unless you're already planning to drop a Kim Kardashian. Nobody's going to have the evidence to go to court and be like, dude, this dude got weird. It's going to be hard to prove regardless. So it's really a matter of, like, from a moral standpoint, how are we going to ask folks to support this guy? And a lot of times it's going to be this argument about, well, we got to separate the athlete from our fandom, blah, 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 blah. And then we go down that trail. But where we started was, you think that he's been groomed by coaches and handlers to go seek out sex from masseuses, and that's very common, and that people at the college level start doing that, and that coaches at the college level are even pushing their guys to go pick out sex from masseuses, which I think is just like an out there notion.
Okay, well, I can tell you from my firsthand experience, I know this happens at Power 5 schools. So you can think it's out there or not. But besides that, let's go back. You're asking questions about what's
if it does happen, how come we haven't seen more of this in the news? Because stuff does get out. Mm-hmm. Once stuff leaks, shit happens. Shit hits the fan. We've seen it at Penn State with the coaches. We've seen it. We've seen this before, where if something,
Deshaun Watson, we're seeing it right now.
I'm saying if something leaks and something's gone awry, usually it grows and expands. It gets bigger. We dig deeper. We find a little bit more out. So how come we're not seeing more? If you're saying that this is such common practice, that coaches groom athletes, how come we haven't seen a little bit more leaks?
Well, because I think the first very easy answer to that question is that there was no athlete that was creating problems for the ownership class like Deshaun Watson was in February of 2021. It was unprecedented. The power that Deshaun Watson was, the power that Deshaun Watson's voice had, the power that Deshaun Watson was exercising as a worker over owners. So I think that's a very easy answer to your
But what do you say about other athletes who've gotten in trouble and there had nothing to do with that, like, oh, he criticized our ownership?
Yeah,
What
you
about
have to-
Jameis Winston? What about Johnny Manziel? What about people who've also committed some types of stuff and it didn't have to do with, oh, well, it's a big smear campaign because he's an athlete and he criticized the organization, and that's why we have found a distinct pattern of repeated pattern of behavior.
They've never had to get this desperate before as they did with Deshaun. Again, you're really underestimating and not appreciating just what a crisis it was for the Texans owners. That's why I want to emphasize that everybody should go back and read this Washington Post report. But even if you believe the worst of what these 3-4 ladies say, that Deshaun grabbed their hands, none of them ever said he got violent. And ultimately, all of these interactions, even the ones where Deshaun actually
Violence
used
doesn't
his
have to
hand,
constitute assault.
why is it that you can't let me finish a question? Why can't you just hear me out?
Because you're putting words in my mouth, bro. I never said he was violent, so why are you gonna say that?
Okay. So
Don't infer that one because I never used those words.
So
misconduct and assault.
Misconduct and assault. Okay, but not violence. So we admit there's no violence. And at most, 3 women are saying that he even touched them. Let's just assume. Okay, Deshaun Watson was in the habit, had a pattern of activity of paying for sex. Oh
my God, but you're being hypothetical again.
I am being hypothetical. I'm asking you to consider a hypothetical. It's what we do as humans. It's what we do as lawyers. It's an important part of making moral decisions, is considering hypotheticals. Assume that Deshaun Watson was paying women for sex and was used to having masseuses accept payment for sex. And that, say, in 3 or 4 of these interactions, it got awkward and these women didn't want to and they didn't understand and they didn't go along with it. So, okay, hence we have these accusations. And now Deshaun Watson realizes, okay, well, shoot, wow, I'm being called out for this now. And say he never does it again. And you know, one may reasonably infer that Deshaun Watson, how old is the guy now? Is he 26, 27?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So say Deshaun is a 26 or 27-year-old, has learned a lesson like, you know, God knows 26 or 27-year-old people do all the time. 28, 29, 30, 31, 32-year-old people, especially people with unprecedented wealth and power. And he's like, well, damn. This whole paying masseuses for sex thing, I was really flying close to the sun on this. I they got me. I really can't do this anymore. My God, I certainly never intended to hurt these ladies. And boy, well, I've learned now. And now I've got all these lawsuits against me and people are trying to destroy my career. You know, say he admits it. Say he admits it that was the worst.
Yes, we got it. Yes. Uh-huh.
Do you believe this guy should never work in the NFL again? Do you believe this guy doesn't deserve a second chance?
Okay, so you're bringing up a good point. Are we saying, does this guy not deserve to work in the NFL, not deserve a second chance? Here's my question to you.
I asked you a question and you're already giving me another question.
Yeah, because what? Okay, well, you want me to answer that?
Yes.
Here's what I think about it. If what we know about people who have a repeated pattern of abusive behavior, and take abusive in the sense of manipulating and taking advantage of, because there is a distinct pattern of that. We can't prove that at every masseuse he reached out to, he was upfront and said, hey, I'm used to paying for sex and I would like it in the form of a massage therapist, a third party. And are you cool with that? That's not how this went down. So eliminate the hypothetical that it was straightforward and every woman knew exactly what she was getting into. That's not the case. What's more and more looking like, no, No, I'm not. Read the documents. Read the documents. I went and I read a bunch of them. And it's the same with, if you look at the cycle of violence, or if you look at anyone who's been a sexual predator, there is a pattern. It's called the cycle of violence because there's a repeated pattern of behavior. Normal people don't repeat a distinct pattern of behavior and then just stop one day. So your hypothetical is just not fit any kind of trend in the field of violence study, sexual violence, domestic violence at all. What you said just does not factually fit with anyone who's had a repeated pattern of behavior. It's not to say no. It's not to say no one can change. It's not to say people don't deserve second chances. But already, if he's denying his actions and not taking accountability, then that's not someone who's willing to change, is it? What we're saying is he needs a consequence. No one here, not me, said, oh, he deserves to never work a day in the NFL. I don't know about that. I'm not going to make any large, I don't know, I'm not God. I think he needs a consequence, though, because what message does it send if we're just going to say, hey, yeah, let's continue this cycle of athletes thinking they're here and treating women like they're down here. It's not a positive cycle.
How in the world has he not suffered a consequence? He didn't work. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he was off work for a year because of these accusations. How's that not a consequence? How's that not enough for you? How's that not enough for you? If the most that he's done, and look, you keep assuming it's abuse. You keep going. It's like you're auditioning for a job at ESPN.
No,
it's wild.
No, I'm not.
No?
I literally said multiple times, even if not all of these are criminal behaviors, we know that there's a pattern of him getting along with women.
What if none of them are? What if none of them are? It's just a pattern? What if it's just a pattern of a man?
Now we want to be hypothetical again. We want to be. I don't think it's worth our time to be hypothetical and keep saying, well, what if nothing happened? So you mean to say, what if 66 masseuses we fabricated when we already have textual evidence? It's not worth our time to hypothetical when we already know that those things happen, or we already know that he reached out to X number of people. We already know from documents that I'm saying, what's it worth our time to say, oh, what if hypothetically none of this happened? What do you mean by that? Like we already have textual evidence.
Hypothetically, look, whatever 60, you keep saying 66. There are 26. There are 26 accusers. Okay. There are 26 women that are lining up for this lawsuit. Okay. So
that were bold enough, 26 women that were bold enough to line up for this lawsuit, which it takes a lot of guts and a lot of balls to do. Because remember, first of all, this is the most unreported type of crime when you're talking about sexual assault cases. So, I'm putting it into context. He reached out to, at least that's what's documented, 66 different women. That doesn't mean they're all criminal. It doesn't mean some of those might have been consensual, sure. But we know the reason I keep bringing that up is because it reiterates and validates the fact that there is a repeated pattern of behavior. And he gets alone with these women, and it's a boundary test for him. What can I get away with right now? What can I manipulate? What can I bribe? He would buy different shampoos from the one lady, because he was doing odd things to smooth it over when he made people feel uncomfortable and stuff. It's manipulative. It's perpetrator-like behavior. So I just can't get on board with your idea that it was upfront. He was very matter of fact about this, to just go pay for sex through these masseuses, and that everyone was on board and everyone knew what was coming. That's not the case. We have somebody with a repeated pattern of perpetrator-like behavior. That's what we got. So to go back to your original question, because that's what matters, not hypotheticals here, because we already know that the hypothetical is no longer. We know that there's real stuff that's been documented.
He's saying repeated pattern of behavior, and what I'm saying, and frankly, this is a fact. This is why there have been no grand jury indictments. Surely,
grand jury indictments is irrelevant, and you should know that. You know who else doesn't get indicted by grand juries?
Police who are
police officers, who kill unarmed black men.
You're very well coached on this.
No, all I'm saying is I've done a little reading, and so if you get offended by the fact that we can't have an interactive conversation, then that's not my problem.
Okay, so you keep saying repeated pattern of behavior, and the fact is the evidence only shows the only repeated pattern of behavior is Deshaun Watson engaging women for massages, and again, it's reasonable
he's a repeated pattern of saying things like, I'm here to support black business. No, bud, no. You're missing it.
that.
There's a repeated
would-
pattern of behavior
The
of
repeated
him
pattern-
of him texting and Instagram messaging, misleading types of requests. That's not the same as what you just told me.
Have you ever paid anyone for sex before?
No.
Have you ever known anyone that's paid for sex before?
Why does this matter?
Have you ever defended anyone who's, well, it's just funny. You seem to think that Instagram messages about paying for sex would be, oh, hey, I want to pay you for sex. Like, that's just not how
right.
it works. It's just
No.
very
But
naive.
people, no.
It's
But
very
how about
naive to
take the
think
money
that-
out of it then, Pete? Take the money out of it then. How about people who just want the sex and they don't feel like they want to pay for it? How about people who just want sex and don't feel like, because a lot of athletes want sex, but they don't feel like they want to pay for it.
I don't think anybody's saying that.
So that's
Deshaun
odd.
did-
That's odd that you would even say that, because first of all, we're assuming that most athletes just think that, oh, I should be paying for it. Most of them think that they don't need to pay for it. Most of them just get it anyway, and they flirt in the DMs and they get to the point. Hey, you want the pipe, as J.R. Smith says, okay? Like, that's literally, to be honest, I mean, yeah, that is how it goes. Do you think
Well,
anyone's
where's the
going to
text
misconstrue
messages
that?
where Deshaun Watson says that?
He doesn't. That's my point. He's manipulative about it. He's not upfront about it. He says, I would like to support Black businesses. I would like to support Black business. And hey, because he was saying things like COVID, I can't use my actual team, masseuses and stuff. That's not the same as, do you want the pipe? It's a way more manipulative process.
Seizing on awkward things that a young man would say and having these conversations with these people that he's, let's just assume that he's soliciting sex for pay from them.
Yeah, let's
Like,
assume.
Seizing on awkward things that he would say, like, I'm trying to support Black-owned businesses. Just,
What do you mean assume?
that's-
Wait, also,
that's
why are we
that's
assuming?
exactly-
That was
that's-
textual. That was
that's-
textual evidence. So we're not going to assume. That was like in text format. So we can just
Right,
say
but
that
this-
that's what he said. We don't need to do hypotheticals for things that are facts. Just remember that. So we don't need to assume here. We can actually just say that those are things that he said.
and so it doesn't prove, the point is that it doesn't prove anything.
So do you not use textual evidence to prove anything in court?
Yeah, I do. I'm very good at it.
Oh, so you do use textual evidence to prove things in court.
I do.
Okay, so now you just caught yourself in a little conundrum here, because what you just said 2 seconds ago is now contradicting what you just said.
No, it's not.
Why would we make an assumption then if you're using textual evidence to prove things?
The question is what?
Why
the
would we
que-
assume that he didn't do those things if we have textual evidence? Because we'll use the textual evidence to prove that they happened. So no need to assume that it
I'm
didn't.
not arguing with you that he sent the messages to say, he's sending text messages to masseuses that he thinks he's going to be able to pay for sex, and he says, I'm supporting Black businesses. It's just, it doesn't prove that he's a rapist. It
No,
doesn't
I never
prove that he
said. Don't
committed
put words in
sexual
my mouth,
assault.
Pete. Stop saying that I'm sitting here saying that it proves he's a rapist. What I have said is that there needs to be a consequence. It's going to be a moral dilemma for us as a fan base. You never even asked me about, so don't be on the other end and put words into my mouth. That's all I ask. I never said, well, he's a rapist and he's this, that. I said there's a distinct pattern of behavior. I think it's compromising women. I don't think it's a good look, and I don't think that the pattern should continue. And yes, I do think that it sets a good example and a good message for him to take some accountability and a consequence. That's all I'm saying. So just go ahead and don't use language that's putting me in a place that I didn't put myself.
Okay, fair enough.
Hey, Peter, one last question. I appreciate your time on all of this.
Sure.
What do you expect the NFL to do with all of this? You have 2 more allegations that came out today. You've got everything now with the Texans seemingly buying hotel rooms and being involved in this. You've got the Browns and their situation of what they believed at the time, and who knows what they believe now. What do you expect the NFL and the Browns to do?
What I expect anyone to do what I expect the NFL to do is to do what anyone with illegitimate power over a situation does, is split the baby. That's what I expect the NFL to do, is to split.
How
the
many
baby.
games? How many games is the split baby?
4 to 8, I would say at worst. I think if he gets anything worse than that, look, I think if he gets even a game, I think it's without any kind of criminal proceeding, without any kind of indictment. If he gets suspended for 1 game, I think it's a disaster. It's very easy to see them suspending him for 4 to 8 games just because the public has been so propagandized on this that they're just going to try to go halfway.
Well, there is a collective bargaining process where it does give the power to the NFL that they can dish out some punishment. So if they feel that the shield is being compromised in any way, as they famously say, they could dish it out. Even if to your point, if you believe that, Deshaun Watson is completely innocent of all this, it doesn't matter because the NFL can say, hey, we still want to dish out 8 games. It looks bad for us. It looks bad for the shield. Right? I mean, in practicality.
In practicality, yes, but the NFL still has to maintain a level of legitimacy to its process. I mean, this isn't a situation like Ray Rice where you have everything on video or Kareem Hunt. This is a situation where it's he said, she said evidence, and there's no violence at all. I mean, you have you have a precedent where players who actually did engage in violent conduct and are on video. So it'd be very hard to see Deshaun getting any worse than that. The worry that I have, just as a citizen who believes in due process, is that they're gonna try to send a message not just to Deshaun but to the Haslams. And frankly, I criticize the Haslams as much as anyone does. The fact that they have given Deshaun a second chance here, the fact that they went ahead and bought in on him despite all of this hanging over him, is really one of the most. It actually builds trust in them. It makes one of the first things that gives me hope in them, that makes me think that maybe they've learned from their mistakes. And God knows there's been plenty of them, and that maybe they're really digging deep and recognizing the excesses of their peers, such as the McNairs. And to see something like this happen, orchestrated by a lawyer like Tony Busby, who has infinite resources to make something like this happen. And they say, you know what? This is wrong. We're standing up for this guy, because even if you believe the worst of what they're saying about him, he doesn't deserve to be canceled for it. He doesn't deserve a fraction of the hell that he's gone through. He already missed a season of his career. Frankly, it's a crime if he misses one more game. And so, the Haslams have stuck their neck out for this guy. And frankly, it's probably the most admirable thing they've done, at least in my opinion. And what I'm worried about is that the other NFL owners will be upset with the Haslams for defending a player in this context, and that to look at this in the context of owners versus players, I just hope that the other owners, and of course Roger Goodell works for the owners, don't retaliate against the Haslams for this. And you know what? In the end, it's up to decent people. It's up to journalists. It's up to talking heads. It's up to citizens, and frankly, people who are independent from the corporate payroll, to be calling out what's what on this and to say this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. And the fact is that even if you believe the worst of the allegations against Deshaun Watson, it doesn't add up that someone would have their entire career ruined because of these allegations, because of this story. And I will maintain, despite your co-host here's inability to believe it, that pro athletes paying prostitutes and masseuses for sex is a common thing. And Deshaun had that table flipped on him at worst here. And to see what he's gone through as a result of that, look, maybe you can argue with his judgment, maybe you can argue with his morals, whatever else, but it doesn't come close to warranting the hell that this guy has been through based on any reasonable account of the facts. So, and I think 2 grand juries have supported that. So, I'm
not saying that I don't think that people don't pay for sex as professional athletes, but your idea that coaches groom college athletes to start on this trend is like a far reach for me.
Yeah, we've covered all that. But Pete, here's my question. With everything going on in the news with Deshaun Watson, are you and knowing that the NFL sometimes will rule with the court of public opinion with all of this stuff, are you surprised that Deshaun hasn't spoken out at all? I know he has the civil trials next year. I think you've kind of laid those out. He said, she said, it's very hard to win probably against him. Are you surprised he's not saying anything to kind of try to clear this up as you've kind of done?
No, I'm not. I think his lawyer's been out there. I think that, you let your lawyers handle this. Rusty Harden has been out in the press. I mean, he did it for a few weeks ago. I mean, my inbox was blowing up with the things that he was saying. And then there was a counteroffensive right after that. I mean, the way that this is all being weaponized in the press, I mean, it tells you a lot. It tells you a lot just to see the timing, the coordination of these reports where you have Real Sports and New York Times and what's the other one, all come out in the same week. And it's just, okay, the guy was paying for sex. Are you gonna cancel him for it? And are you really gonna take a look at, you had owners doing this. You had Rob Kraft doing the same thing, Bob Kraft doing the same thing. And look, the disparity in the way these are treated. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. So, look, I will say this too, is that I've been encouraged, I've been inspired by the response that my posts have gotten. And look, we have hardly gotten into it tonight, but I've broken down at my website that a lot of Busby's legal maneuvers just don't make any sense from a legal perspective. And these are cases that once you file them, they lose all their value. That most of the value in these cases is to just make them go away. So I think there was a Pro Football Talk report, and I think there were some reports that he offered all of the accusers $100,000 each, but he wanted the settlement to be confidential. And then I guess some of the accusers, which I think is interesting because I think this is something that Busby manipulates, or is definitely, I can say this as a lawyer, he is in a position to manipulate. So think about this. Say that Deshaun was willing to pay $100,000 to each of these accusers. That's chump change for him, right? But if you're a masseuse who's taking money for sex, that is a life-changing amount of money. It is an absolutely life-changing amount of money to get $100,000 or even $70,000 or $60,000 or $50,000, depending on what cut Busby was going to take. And Deshaun was going to pay that because he wanted the Dolphins deal to go through. That ends up getting rejected because it needed to be an all or nothing deal. And now, so you get past that, you go into court on these claims, you go into court and you try to say that a jury of 12 people needs to sit there for a week because it's going to take at least that, even if they did these all at one time, and maybe some of them will be consolidated. And I admit I'm not that familiar with the docket, but you're asking citizens of your peers, 12 or I guess in a civil case, at least in Ohio, it's 8 jurors. And I don't know how many jurors you have on a civil case in Texas, but in Ohio, it's 8. And you have them sit down and hear about how you were a masseuse, and you had Deshaun Watson come into your room and, he asked you for sex and he was entitled and maybe he got a boner or something while he was in there. How much you think a jury's going to give you? It's not $100,000. It's not reasonable to expect them to give you $100,000. And then you have Rusty Harden there doing his job, and that's part of what shows you that there's something else going on here. And look, I'm mostly a plaintiff's lawyer. I don't go into court on a case like that unless there was some real harm done. Unless there was some real abuse of power, some real injury or some real public policy that needed to be vindicated. And it's just very hard for anyone to articulate what that would be, especially in these cases where there's no physical contact. So I said this at Cleveland Frowns in my posts, the most you would expect these cases to get, even if the jury liked your clients, even if the jury hated Deshaun, and frankly, I don't think that's going to be the case. Deshaun is always presented as a very likable, very respectable young man. And even if the jury believes these ladies, and again, let's just talk about the cases where there's no allegation of physical contact. He made them feel uncomfortable. He made them feel like he was going to do something. Are you sitting with 8 members, a cross-section of Texas citizens, to imagine that they would award honestly, a lot of them would probably want to award 0 just to send a message. But even if you can get past the 0, because people say, why are you wasting my time with this case? And even if you can get past the 0 and get them to see there was a wrong, to get them to award 4 figures, 5 figures, let alone mid 5 figures or high 5 figures, it's very difficult. So that's what raises questions about ulterior motives going on here. So and again, and I appreciate the debate here, and I know that we got heated. I got heated with your co-host.
Yeah, and I don't know what you mean by this whole last part, but I'll dissect it later.
Okay, fair enough. But look, in the end, I do agree that we do have to decide who are we going to support as fans and why.
Yeah, the only thing that we're saying, I just think it's weird that you bring up, should he be canceled or he's called a rapist or this or that. First of all, he's not going to be canceled. We've already seen. Like, I think
he's being canceled.
He's tough enough to take a window of Twitter hate. But I mean, as it happens, a lot of these athletes still have careers after things like this happen. The thing at hand, and I guess we never
There's
laid
been
it out
nothing
clearly.
like this. Let's be clear. There's been nothing like this campaign against Deshaun Watson. There's never been an athlete who was featured in the Washington Post as being a new voice for social justice, upsetting the balance of power between players and owners. And then all of a sudden, a trickle of sex assault allegations come in that are all represented by the same lawyer who's the neighbor with the owner of the team that this player is creating a problem. That has never happened. So let's not pretend like this has ever happened before. There's never been anything.
Well, there's usually never. I mean, I can't think of things where they're all the same, though. There's all kinds of similar situations than this, but they're not all going to be the same circumstances with the same variables. I think how would we? So that's a weird thing to assume anyway.
In NFL history. Name one player in NFL history.
What about the Penn State coach who assaulted multiple young men? That's multiple. So remember, I'm talking about repeated patterns of behavior. That's
Jerry Sandusky? Hold on a second. I'm
talking about repeated patterns of behavior. I don't know what point you're trying to make that we've never seen something of this nature. Not all of them are going to look the same. It doesn't mean that these things that have happened are all morally correct. Because at the end of the day, what we're talking about is not, no one here on this podcast said he should get canceled or he should be a rapist. I don't know. I've only spoken for myself. So I don't know who you're beating to hell about it. But all I've said is, I'll
tell you who I'm beating to hell about it.
I think that people are just looking at, all right, we have some decisions to make from a moral standpoint as a fan base. I think he should have some accountability. It'd be really cool if he made some real efforts to take accountability. Maybe he won't, whatever. But we're just saying that the materializing a consequence, taking accountability, that's a good look as a leader for the face of our franchise. Nobody here said, well, he should be canceled forever or he should never play a game. We're saying that, well, we should really take the repeated pattern of behavior seriously, because if we don't, we're really, really, really doing a disservice to lots of people who have been victimized. Maybe not to the same degree, because like we're saying, okay, maybe not all of this was criminal, maybe not. We really don't know. It's a he said, she said. It's really tough. But I will say, if you dance with it wrong, it sets a really dangerous precedent also for real victims of real bad situations is my point. So I don't know who you're beating. I don't know who you're beating to hell about. Like,
Here, let me tell you, like you say you're not trying to cancel Deshaun Watson. I'm looking at a column in the New York Times by a man named Kurt Streeter, and it's dated June 9th, 2022. This man is trying to cancel Deshaun Watson, and he's doing it in the New York Times, and it's one of the most shameful columns I've ever seen. And frankly, what he's saying in this column echoes a lot of what you have said here. So maybe you're saying that, you don't want to cancel him, but this guy, I can give you a quote for him. This guy's saying he doesn't think Watson should ever play in the league again.
All right, so from the beginning of the advent of
Here,
the
let me
internet,
read this.
from the
Let me
beginning
read
of
this.
the
This is
advent
New
of
York
the
Times.
internet, Pete, from the beginning of the advent of the internet, people have been saying shock value opinions, and those will continue, and people will still have careers after. So just so have your opinion on that column, but it's also a fact that shock value and damning opinions have been sprawled on the internet for ages and will continue to do so, and it's not going to ruin everybody's career because we've also seen that. A lot of these athletes pick up and they still have great careers. So that's the reality
Your
of
only
it.
comparison so far was Jerry Sandusky, which I think says a lot. This
No,
case is,
okay. Who? All right.
what other
Then
athlete-
pause. Give me 30. Okay, then let's evaluate some other athletes. Kobe Bryant still had a career after his rape case. Jameis Winston, he got into some trouble. Even Johnny Manziel still played and had some of a career after whatever he went through. Kareem Hunt, and I guess it all varies because contrary to what you said, yeah, we're not going to have it's a given. We're not going to have all cases that are the exact same. So I think it's weird to say, oh, this is a case we've never seen. Yeah, they're all like, how are we all, if you line them all up and write them down on a piece of paper, they're all going to have different variables, different teams, different organizations, different colors, different players. It's not, yeah, that's a given. So I don't know why you're saying in jest like, well, we have never, well, actually, yeah, that's the common denominator because we're not
seen anything like this in history. We've never seen a young black quarterback with the star power that Deshaun Watson had, who was exercising his dissenting voice as powerfully as Deshaun Watson was.
Wait. That's one thing. I will stop you once again, Pete. What did he do? How did he exercise his voice?
Yeah.
Again.
I
no
one
knows. His voice in a way
you keep
that
saying
was
that he
powerful,
did
that was so powerful. Again, look at it was so powerful that the Washington
that nobody
Post
knows.
column.
It was so powerful, but that you don't know. That
we
I
don't
know,
put Colin Kaepernick
knows.
and him in the same sentence.
That's the biggest stumbling I have with this whole thing. That I don't understand what he did. Like Colin Kaepernick, like, okay, yeah, there's something I could point to. Okay, I get that. As soon as you say Colin Kaepernick, yeah, I know what he did. Deshaun Watson, you keep saying, well, he did this thing. And I'm like, what did he do? What did he do?
He was speaking out, Chris.
He spoke out, and he spoke out so loudly
that nobody knows about it.
That's I think that's where it kind of falls down for me.
Well, I mean, why do you think the Washington Post is pulling this out of thin air? Do you think the Washington Post is pulling this out of thin air when they write a post that says Deshaun Watson is taking a stand against disingenuous NFL?
Well, that's where, as a critical reader, I would look at it and I'd say, okay.
According to you, lots of journalists pull things out of thin air.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Pete. You're a critical reader. You think the same thing.
A player awakening that owners should acknowledge and respect rather than trivialize the men.
And what is it?
Even just saying he's leaving, Chris. Even just saying he's leaving. Imagine if Deshaun Watson left after signing that contract.
Your whole argument is based on one article no one's read.
To be fair,
I don't know about that.
Anyway, I don't want to get too caught up on that. That was just something that strikes me. I mean, that's kind of the crux of this whole thing.
I think it's a good question.
And I'm still trying to figure out what that is, and no one's been able to tell me what that is that he did.
Well, he was forcing his way out of town. I think we know that.
Forcing his way out of town, which happens all the time.
Well, I think it was he was forcing his way out of town because he had a racist owner.
Okay.
I think that's all that it was.
So we're adding things, but what did he?
Oh.
I'm still trying to figure out what exactly he did. I understand that the talk was that he was forcing his way out of town, and everybody makes it sound like he did this one thing that was so big that he said this. He took this stance, And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that is other than forcing their way out. But anyway, we've kept you way too long, Peter. I really appreciate the conversation here tonight. I thought it was fantastic. Got a lot out on the table. Dave, I'll let you kind of put your last piece on it. Anything you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to promote here?
Oh, me?
I'm sorry, Pete. Pete, it's been a long night already. Give me a little bit of a break here. Yeah, Pete, I'm talking to you. I referenced Dave.
No, here's what I would like to promote. I would like to promote you guys. I would like to promote independent media and people just having honest, difficult conversations about this subject.
That's what we can agree on right there.
And just unfiltered. Look, I didn't come on here with a script. I got a million things to do. I'm not like, people are like, oh, you want Deshaun Watson to hire him? Like, I don't have time to work for Deshaun Watson. I came on here because Dave and Chris, Dave's one of my old friends. Chris, we've been following each other for years now, and you guys wanted to have me on, and Chris, you guys sending my link out ended up getting a lot of steam, and a lot of people, I think, just sense that what we're being fed by the mainstream media just isn't accounting for everything. So that's really what I want to promote. I would, people want to go to my website and read my thoughts on this. Like, frankly, the last thing my law partners would tell you, the last thing I should be doing is promoting my football website. But go read that. And that's where I'm putting it out there. And I'm putting it out there because I care about justice. I care about the truth. And I hate to see, even if Deshaun Watson did some questionable things or some things that maybe don't fit to traditional Judeo-Christian criminal doesn't, and it certainly doesn't warrant a fraction of what he's suffered right now. And frankly, I think there's just too many reasons to be suspicious of the owner class versus the player class or the laborer class and you're not going to have those questions raised in the corporate media. So I'm glad you guys, and look, hey, you guys do numbers here too, but you guys have a degree of independence that I appreciate. That's why I'm here. I'm speaking unfiltered. I've got my Revere High School mug full of beer. And
Go Minutemen. I went there freshman year, by the way.
That's a small
Revere.
world.
I lived in Bath. Yeah, I lived in Bath, went to Revere freshman year before I moved down to Granville, Ohio. So,
well, I appreciate the hell out of it. And, I appreciate that we could lock horns here. And,
I appreciate the open conversation. I think we need more of that because people are going to be their own critical readers. And the important thing is to see multiple sides, to have that marketplace of ideas for us to form our own opinions about truth. And that's valuable. So interactive dialogue is super valuable. And we appreciate you coming on.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. Peter Pattakos. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Dave. Thanks, man.
Take care. I am spent.
It is
still have a
10:30.
It is bedtime.
Do we still have a contestant? Are we doing that tonight?
I don't know if they were here and they left or they just never showed up. But no, I think we call it at that.
Yeah.
Right, Chris?
Oh, I think so. I think so.
Woo! Gab, you sweating?
I'm sweating over here.
Gab.
I didn't go to law school, but I'll say this:
do you want to roll?
It's scary to have words put in your mouth. That's the only scary part of arguing with a lawyer. Because if you didn't say something and have someone giving you an attack that on the grounds of something you never said, it's a little uneasy. But other than that, I think it's fine to have. He should have his points, and we should evaluate these points, and all of us should have an open mind to evaluating those points. And at the end of the day, it's you draw your own conclusions. But the thing is, all points should be heard. So from a victim standpoint, then we should hear that too. We shouldn't be offended by it. We should be open-minded to seeing all sides, all voices.
So how many games is Deshaun Watson going to be suspended? Gab,
I was going to ask Pete for a record prediction at the end of that.
I don't know. I think to Pete's point, actually, I mean, it has gotten enough steam that maybe they do want to send a message, but I don't think.
Do they go Bauer? They go full Bauer and take him out for the year?
Oof.
But I don't know if it would be full Bauer. I really can't say. I don't know. Bauer's was a lot worse. And so what Pete is saying is correct in that what's been documented, some of it is really messed up. It's out of the norm. It's not normal, and it's not
Right.
fair to expect that some women just expected that or thought that that was going to happen or that it was consensual. So I do think it's not good behavior. It's not the same as beating someone up when they're unconscious. So that was the whole point I was making. So many of these are the first of their kind. So many of them are different. They're all different. They're all new. We've never seen even a Bauer situation. The closest thing we've seen to that is Ray Rice, and that's not the same situation. So I don't know. Maybe not a full season, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll tell you one thing on that too, and one of his main points there was kind of like everybody else is doing it, which I did have an issue with, and you harped on it several times, but that really resonated with me having kids. Like just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you could do it, and that's
Don't
And
be
we
a
shouldn't. Why do
follower.
we have to make that the norm? He brought up
That's
religion, like,
exactly
oh, just because
that's
it's not
that's
Christian
that's
morals. Well, nobody here is saying no. We don't even have to bring Christian into it. It's just about being a decent person and what message are we going to send to our kids about being role models. We should just assume that hey, this is the norm, and we should just make it the norm. No, because if we make that the norm and we say that it's okay and we send that message, it is likely to get dangerous. The more we know about the cycle of these repeated patterns of behavior where a lot of it is misconduct or abuse, they'll tell you in any trends, the cycle of abuse, the longer it goes on, the worse it gets. I know it's really negative to say that no one can change. I'm not saying that, but there are very strong trends that people who have been thinking and behaving in entitled and abusive or perpetrating misconduct ways, it takes a lot for them to change because that's how they get their wants and they don't have a reason to change. That's how they get all their needs met. So that's just the reality of it. The thing is he's so well versed in law and the legal jargon, and that's great. And looking at it from proven guilty, but that's awesome. I think what has happened is justice so far. You know, if it wasn't that much of a crime, then it didn't get to criminal, punishment. But the point still is we still need to look at the fact that if there's a repeated pattern of this type of behavior, do we want to just tell our kids like, yeah, that's what they do. That's just
well, right. I'm saying 8 games. 8 games. They're going to suspend him for 8 games. That way they can say it's just less than half the season.
yeah, maybe.
Dave,
I think it's going to be either 0 games or it's going to be a full season.
Wow.
All or nothing.
Because
All
I
or
really
nothing.
don't think you're going to please anyone with 4 games or 6 games or even 8 games. I think that I don't know if it'll actually happen, but I think that's the way it should go. Is they should say, listen, he's clearly not the worst guy in the NFL. There's plenty of guys worse than him. And he didn't do anything criminal. He's going to get 0. Or I could see the other way. the other side of it, I think they could say what Gab's saying is that he has this pattern. He needs more consequences than just getting, dragged through the coals on the internet. And he needs
because it's going to send a message to other players too, and it's setting the tone for what behavior is going to be tolerated from everyone else too.
And that's what that's
I
what
think
the league likes to
thing-
do.
I think the thing that was lost in that conversation with Pete is that, like, to your point, he clearly was manipulative in these DMs, and probably not all of these women, but I think that there's definitely a couple of them who had no idea, who thought they were going to promote their business, and he's there and he was super creepy and they got freaked out by it. And I think that definitely probably happened.
Yeah, I just think it's a dangerous precedent to start minimizing that type of behavior because then now we got a slippery slope. We're going to minimize and justify and minimize. It's like that's how perpetrators repeat. So it is dicey.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of kind of moving parts to it. So you've got Pete's whole side with the whole ownership and it's a smear campaign. And then you've got what Deshaun actually did and sent text messages. And no one's ever going to really know because, like Pete said, like you said, it's he said, she said. It's 2 people in a room. We're never going to know. And that's honestly why Chris and I haven't really talked about this much, is that we're not going to get like an actual concrete evidence-based conclusion to this.
Right.
Which I think people realize. So it's going to be the NFL. What are they going to do? And we're still here waiting.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And
I don't think he's going to be canceled, though. It's just about doing the right thing in the moment. I really think he'll have a career just like so many other people who've done some other athletes who've done some messed up stuff. They still have careers. I don't think he has to worry about that.
well, and I think your example that you brought up was really good, which is Kobe, because nobody
Yeah, nobody talks about it.
Nope.
Kobe in those terms, and I'll bring it up to my kids every once in a while, when they talk about Kobe, and I'll say, hey, there's this other part about Kobe too. So, but in any case, this was quite a show, I will tell you.
Yes.
Hour and a half, very heavy subjects. Hopefully, at some point, we're going to have some sort of a resolution here, and get back to talking some football. Because I know, obviously, these are very important things and things that we're going to be dealing with the rest of our lives, and this stuff never seems to end, unfortunately. And that's why the work that you're doing, Gab, out there in our schools and everything is so important. But for us, sports are a diversion as well. And so it'd be nice for sports to find that rightful place again.
Right.
I think they serve that very well around my household, and I'd like to get closer to that space.
We can all agree there.
That's right. All right, I am spent. How about you guys?
Yes.
Me too.
Take us out, Dave.
I'm sweaty.
Well, thanks for tuning in to the Big Play Reflog Show. We will see you guys next Monday night, 9 p.m. Huge shout out to all of our sponsors. We will see you then. Have a great night.
It's time! Streaming live from Cleveland, Ohio! Presenting the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight podcast of the world, the Big Play Reflog Show!